development, we'll start with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then we'll move into more of the programming side once we get started with JavaScript and into a little bit of game development. But starting off, we're going to do web development. And HTML, I like to describe the web development process. HTML is the framework. Like you're building a house, this would be the wood and the foundation of the house and how you set up your framework. And that's often a word that they'll use for HTML is the framework of the web development, where CSS is the styling. It stands for Cascade Style Sheets, and it will be more the glamour, the paint, the color that is on your web page. And so when you're looking at how you're formatting a web page, the way it looks, the way it's designed, that's more CSS. Where JavaScript, you can see how it's more of a fully functional website or house where you have lights on and a front door and chimney going on and electricity and things like that to help complete the full process of the web page. And that's so we're going to be using a software called Caret. And actually, this is just a Chrome extension, so it's not even something that you need to download onto your computer. You just add it as an extension onto Chrome. The reason I'm using that is because in the past I've used the Sublime Text Editor, and I found this really useful and a great software to use. And now that we are in this pandemic and working remotely, it's going to be great for us to be able to communicate, and you guys will be able to use it through any Chrome OS system. And so the fact that you guys have Chromebooks, many of you, it will allow you guys, whatever device you want to use, whether that be a Chromebook or Windows, you actually are able to use Caret. And I will be using it on my PC, but this will allow you guys to use it on your Chromebooks, and you can work on it completely offline if you needed to. And it has all the capabilities that are necessary and many that are utilized with Sublime Text as well. So getting started with HTML. We talked about how HTML is kind of the framework of web development, but HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It tells the browser what the structure of the website is going to be, where the title, body, images, videos, all these things go, in what order, and how it's built. And HTML is the foundation of web development, and fundamentals are essential for building a website. So this is kind of what you would see on a normal HTML page. And so when you're typing your HTML code, you can see the angular brackets. You can see how it's boxed out and organized in a way that's visually appealing and easy to read. And these are just some of the very, very basics of HTML that you'll see. And we'll go ahead and get into that. Right now. So I'm going to open up Caret. I'll open up a new slide for us. And so the first thing in HTML and in just web development is knowing what file type you are creating. And so when you create a file, you want to make sure you save it, and you save it as a correct file type. As you can see here, I have a folder for my coding one, and I have a few examples that we've done previously of our first web page. So if I just make a web page number one, just doing a new name for it, even though they're very similar here, I just want to make sure I end it with .html. Okay, now that it has ended with .html, this can be read by the web browser. So whatever web browser you're using, it can read an HTML file. And so you want to make sure that that's what you save it as, an HTML file. And if you noticed, you might not have noticed, but this originally was plain text when it was a TXT file. It is automatically changed to an HTML file. That allows the syntax, the Caret, to read the actual code that you're putting in here, and allows it to make changes, check for errors, and do things for a little bit of auto completion and things like that. So the first thing we want to do is tell Caret and emphasize, and not tell Caret, but actually tell the web browser what doc type we are going to have, what document type, what file we're going to have. And so we're telling Google Chrome or Internet Explorer that it's about to read an HTML document. Okay, and then so if you type in HTML here, if you had it as plain text or something else, Let's go ahead and go to plain text. This is just shows up all black and won't give you any help. And if you type in, like body, it won't automatically finish. Or if you type in HTML, it wouldn't automatically complete for you. So you want to make sure that you are in that HTML format so that it can read it for you. Okay. So if we go back to the slides, you'll see that. So you see we have a head tag, open tag, and close tag here. And we have a body start tag and close tag, as well as title. All of these tags actually have a start and a close. So you want to make sure that you have those. The difference between the first one and the last one is just this / in front of it. It's nice. Caret will auto-complete that for us. So if I created a head, we'll talk a little bit further. So if we create a head tag, we'll talk a little later on about what specifically the purpose of that specific tag is. But the title tag is what we're going to focus on first. And then I can call it my web page. And then let's go ahead and create our body tag. And so I'm going to give a little bit of space between where the head tag starts and ends and where the body tag starts. We'll start with a header. Every website should have a header. And this is my website. And if I haven't saved, then this will be just a blank circle. And you want to make sure you save before you ever try to show it up on the internet. And so we're gonna pull it up on a browser here. And so I do Control S to save, or you can save file. And what that will do is change that circle to an X. And then now if we go back in and we see that web page number 1, what we've called it, and we double click, if you have it .html and you have a default browser, it'll take you to the default browser. So my default browser is Chrome. And so it'll take me to an empty Chrome page that says, this is my website. Okay. So you can add a paragraph, something simple that says, this is a paragraph, and you can keep adding to it and we can go from there. But we're going to go back to the PowerPoint after we pull this back up. So let's go back to my web page. This is a paragraph. Okay. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. And if you've already completed and made this show up on the page, you see that my web page with the exclamation point is the title. So that's what will show up in the tab. And then hopefully you know if you refresh, it'll update it as long as you saved it in Caret. Okay. So let's go back to the PowerPoint and we'll keep going. So what is a tag? Well, we did a couple examples of tags, but what they actually are hidden keywords within a web page that define how your web browser must format and display the content. Most tags have 2 parts, an open and a close. And I'll do beginning tag, end tag, or start and end tag, however you want to name it. But then there's also attributes, which we're going to ignore for now, but we'll talk about them in just a little bit. They're additional characteristics or properties of the element, such as width and height of an image, maybe the name of something, or a link, a hyperlink. You might need to know what URL you want to send that link to. So attributes are specified in the start tag. And so you can kind of see it right here. You could name this the ID of a button, call it start button. And then you could click on and it would show up as just start. And maybe it takes you somewhere, or it starts a game or something. But there's a few different things that you can use as attributes, and they don't necessarily show up, but they are stored as certain things that are useful in your code. So just be aware of that. Okay. So HTML tags a little bit more. They're keywords, tag names surrounded by the angle brackets, like we've shown. Normally come in pairs, open and closed. Not always. I'll show you a few that are empty brackets, or empty tags, if you will. The first tag in a pair is a start tag. Then there's an end tag. End tag is written like a start tag with a forward slash before the tag name. Start and end tags are also called opening and closing tags. Okay. So the web browser. The purpose of the web browser, such as Chrome, Explorer, Firefox, Safari, is to read HTML documents and display them as web pages. The browser does not display the HTML tags. The tags are invisible, like we mentioned before. So if I go back and I open up, and you can actually right-click, depending on the security of your computer, if you're on a school computer or whatnot, but you will be able to inspect many pages or view page source. So if I view page source, it just so happens that it's exactly like what my Caret code looks like here. Okay, so these are identical down to the spacing. We could also open up Google and view the web page source here. Okay, and it'll show you exactly what the code is here. Let's do, this is always fun. So if you want to copy this, all this HTML code, add a new file, and it's going to be worth the wait, guys. So make sure that it's HTML. We're going to practice setting up your HTML page again, but this time, all this is just copy and pasted from view page source on Google. Okay. Some of these things might be ignored. And then we save file as google.html. And then we go in and we open google.html, and it's trying to set up Google for us. It doesn't have the image of Google. So here we have the image of Google saved in there. And then we have different links and things that are outside the capability of Caret, but you can kind of see how it's getting started. There's other web pages that would work absolutely perfectly. If you use Sublime Text, which is something I've used before, this would actually show up for you, but I still think it's a cool thing. Depending on the text editor that you use, it could potentially work for you, but I just think that's a fun little thing to do anyways. So you can do that on any web page, but you can't post it onto a website. This only is used as, so this just copies what we did in the file. It actually is not a web page, so you couldn't access this from another computer. The computer needs to have a URL, and you need to post it. You need to post the HTML to the web page for it to actually be accessible outside of your computer or where you've saved the code. So, all right. So, getting back, after web browser does not display the HTML tags. Yes, we talked about that. So HTML editors. Here are some of the older, more popular HTML editors. Adobe Dreamweaver, Notepad++ are some of the big ones. Sublime Text we talked about, which is a big one. And the one that we're using, Caret, I think is a great one to use. So all of those are pretty good options. They all do very similar things. I don't think there's a huge advantage or disadvantage to one over the other for HTML. Now, for other programming languages, people have preferences. You feel free to look up some of those if you are interested in going into other programming languages, but we'll kind of get over that hurdle when we get to it. So we went through some HTML headings. There's the H1, which is the biggest one, which is the one we used. There's also H1 all the way to H6, which would be the smallest. So I'm going to change this to, this is the largest heading. H6, this is the smallest. Okay, and if you save that, go back and refresh it. Excuse me, don't refresh the view page source. Refresh, here we go. This is the largest heading, this is the smallest heading, this is a paragraph. So even the smallest heading is smaller than the default for what paragraph font is. So just understand that there's different sizes. Obviously, H2 is a little smaller than the largest, H3 smaller than that, and it goes all the way, it goes smaller fonts, the higher the H1 or the H number goes. Okay. Okay, HTML paragraphs. HTML paragraphs are defined with a p tag. Paragraphs are nice because once you get into your programming and your styling, it's nice to be able to sector off all the paragraphs, and then you could change the background of every paragraph in your code, and it might be different than the color behind your heading, or maybe you have your paragraph fly in from the side and you don't want your heading to fly in from the side. So being able to specify where your paragraph is versus where your heading is important, not only for the size of the font, but also just so you can do certain things and specify where you want to go. HTML links. Okay, this is another fun one. So HTML links are defined with an A tag, and it's an href is your attribute. So we talked about attributes before. These are specifically designed things that are inside of the tag. So you see it's a open tag, then space, and then href equals the website, and you put quotes around the website. Then you close off that open, you end that open tag right here, and then this would be what shows up in blue. Okay, so the classic one is Wikipedia, and you look up coding, and you have all of these A tags here, all of these 8 links here. All of these are links, hyperlinks. Okay, so if I view the page source code and I scroll down, I see all of these hyperlinks. See, I have them in a list, and they're href, so on and so forth. And you keep going through these, and all of these are just different links. And it's going to wiki coding theory, wiki source coding. And then this is what shows up in blue, coding theory. Okay, so I could find that coding theory right here. Okay, and it matches up with the coding theory right here. Okay, so that's kind of cool way to look at it. And so that's just by viewing the page source. Okay, so if that's what we wanted to do, we could say, this is a paragraph. Here is a link to Google. And I could say, if I want Google to be in blue, inside of my paragraph tag even, I could do an A tag, A href equals www.google.com. And then I could close my A tag. Now it tries to put do the end A tag right here, but I want to put it inside. So I'm going to move Google inside of between this end beginning right here and end right here, so that Google shows up in blue. So I save it. I double check and make sure and hope it's right. Okay, here's a link to Google, and now I can click on Google, and if I go to google.com, I want to make sure I copy this, and maybe I double check that it's the exact same HTTPS and not just google.com, to make sure that will actually work. So I can refresh it. I saved it, and now I'm actually going to google.com. Now, while my web page doesn't work on the internet, the link that I've put here will be able to access the internet if I click it. So just remember to do Control S to save after you finish something like that, and then you should be good to go. Name, entity expected, got none. So normally you would name your link and name what it is, but that's kind of a step that you can skip for now. So that is how you can do an href right there, an A tag, excuse me. So this is our link A tag, HTML link. So now we can do an image. And so HTML images are defined with img tag, example w3schools.jpg. So if you need, this is a little bit tricky because you need an actual image that will be accessible for this web page number 1. Now, this web page number 1 really can't access anything unless it's in the same folder together. Or, yeah, right in the same folder together, actually. So if I go to my pictures and I drag in something to coding 1, now I have this 2D maze tutorial preview.png, and I can rename. I'll just copy, and I can go into Caret and I can say img and I forgot to mention that SRC stands for source, and so you want to put the source code or the source or where we're finding this image, and we're finding this image by the name of it. So you would do img src equals, and then in quotes I'd paste that in. And img does not have a close bracket, but you can give it a height. Otherwise it'll give it the default height that the picture has. So let's see what that does if we Control S and refresh. There you go. Now you have a picture of a 2D maze tutorial that I've created. Okay. So HTML documents are defined by HTML elements. An HTML element is everything from the start tag to the end tag. The start tag is often called the opening, end tag is often called the closing. And so here is the element and the content inside right here. Empty HTML elements don't have anything in between. They're just the one tag. So BR is a line break, which is nice to be able to use. So if I went in and I wanted to force a line break or 2 or 3, and I wanted some space, so I'm going to do 3 right here. More likely than not in the future, when we learn CSS, you'll be using that to move and format things around. But for now, this is a forced line break, they call it. And you see the space just showed up there. So it was snug up to this is a paragraph, but now we've forced it down a bit. So HTML attributes provide additional information about HTML elements. HTML elements can have attributes. This is what we were talking about earlier with the images and the links. So here the href is an attribute. That is the attribute for the A tag. It needs that. The image, where was that? The image needed a source picture to use, and the width and the height are also attributes as well. So additional information about the element. So we talked about elements. This is a paragraph. If we wanted additional information, we could call it google.com, and then inside this is the element that we're linking and changing the link to the Google to blue. Okay. One of the most important and misunderstood, I guess, and not utilized enough thing is comments in your code. And we're going to talk more about comments later on, but comments can be inserted in HTML code to make it more readable and understandable. Comments are ignored by the browser and are not displayed. So depending on your skill level, I would not normally comment something like this if you are an experienced programmer. But starting off, you could comment these things so that they are easily able to be read for yourself as well as for others. So in order to comment, you want the open angle bracket, exclamation point, dash dash. This is a comment, dash dash, close angle bracket. Now that's hard for even me to remember. But this exclamation point, dash dash, and then you can type in whatever you want. You can say, here are the and largest header sizes. I can go dash dash close, and you see this went from being kind of a gray-green, and the rest of it was gray-green before I closed it off. You want to make sure when you do a comment and you see the colors messed up that you understand ways to fix that. One of those ways is to make sure that you've closed those things off. Okay. So comments are great to organize for yourself as well as for others reading your code, help you remember potentially different tags or what different things are doing. So there's also a lot of text formatting that you can do. You can probably barely read these, but B is bold text, EM is for emphasized text, I is for italicized essentially, and then there's smaller, more important text, subscripts, inserted text, deleted text, etc., etc. Feel free to try those out. I think they can be very useful, but not always necessary to go through every one of those. Better for you guys to test those out. So, and here's your assignment. So, I'd like for you guys to do an About Me page. You're going to create a new HTML web page that you haven't started yet that tells a little bit about yourself. I'd like you to include at least the following: 2 different header font sizes, 1 paragraph about yourself, so a little bio, 1 image of yourself, a link to a hobby that you enjoy. So a link to maybe a web page about fishing or about gaming or a sport that you like or a sports team that you like. It doesn't have to be necessarily a hobby, but maybe an interest as well. Just make sure you practice making that a tag. Giving you a hint there. So remember that's the a tag. And then you're going to need an image that you are able to save into your folder. Remember that you would have to save that image into your folder. 3 different text formatting. So there's bold, italics, underline, increase, decrease font. And there's going to be one more that I'm going to add right now. And that is 1 tag that you haven't used before. That I did not include. So I want you guys to look up one more tag that you guys can add to your website that you can use that you think would look cool. Now, we don't have any of our CSS, our styling. You remember that CSS is how you paint the house and make it look pretty. So you're not going to have the most beautiful website, but you are going to be able to practice those HTML things. So I hope you guys are excited and ready to get going. That concludes lesson 1 of Coding 1 Web Development.